Let me ask you this question. Are you afraid to fail? And if you answer yes, what exactly are you afraid of? Do you know that at one point Oprah was told that she may never make it as a newscaster? And now I may not get these details exactly right, but you'll get the idea of what I'm sharing. I can't recall it exactly, but I know that I read that even like Abraham Lincoln was told that he would never make it as a president. And also Eminem or Marshall Mathers was told that he would never amount to anything. If these people and many others like them actually listened to those people that told them they could not amount to anything, and they let their fear, allow their fear to stay in the way of them moving forward, they would never have the success that they have had. Here's the problem with fear. The problem with fear and the fear of failing in particular, it keeps us playing small. It keeps us in our comfort zone where we are safe. Now, this is not necessarily your fault. There are a couple reasons for this. One is that our brains are wired to stay with what is familiar, AKA what is comfortable, what is safe. Back in the cave days, you left the tribe and you went out and wandered on your own. There could be a really good chance that you might get attacked by a bear or a tiger. And so our brains or your brain would have become conditioned to not go out and venture into something new. Stay where it's safe, stay where it's familiar, in the tribe with everyone. That is an outdated wiring in our brains, but nonetheless, it's there. And so now in modern time, it shows up in the way that if you want to do something that is out of the norm, where you have to take a risk, put yourself out there, put yourself on the line. Maybe you are thinking you want to get a divorce. Maybe it's asking somebody out on a date, or maybe it's writing a book, putting yourself out on social media, leaving your job to start a business and become an entrepreneur, becoming a podcaster, becoming visible in the public space. Any one of those things that you might be thinking about or have been toying with for years, and you keep ignoring that call because the fear of the unknown, taking that risk, being vulnerable is too scary. And that's totally understandable, completely understandable, especially if you have people pleasing and perfectionistic tendencies. And that's what this podcast is about. And if you are listening and you follow me, thank you, by the way, for listening and following to my podcast, then you most likely identify with those behaviors and those tendencies. So if you know that you have these patterns in you to please or to perfect or to perform, there's a really good chance, I'm going to venture, I would say there's a really good chance that you have a fear of failing. And it's hard for you to put yourself out there. First, let me say this. I hear you. I get it. And you know this. If you've been following me for a while, you know my story and you know that I am a recovering people pleaser perfectionist. So I know really well what it feels like to be afraid, to step outside my comfort zone, take a risk because I'm afraid to fail. If I don't do it all perfectly all at once, then I'm not worthy. I'm not valuable. That's the story that we tell ourselves. And oftentimes, these stories get created in our subconscious minds when we're in our childhood. I'll share with you. I have many examples, but one that really sticks out. This story really resonates with me and others. When I was 10 years old, I went to try out for the lead role in the play Snow White. I wanted to be Snow White. I was used to singing and dancing in my living room, in my kitchen. I would just put on shows and performances for my mom, and she always clapped and cheered. So as far as I knew, I was good at singing until I went to try out for the lead role of Snow White, and that did not go well. Needless to say, I didn't get the lead role because I cannot carry a tune whatsoever. I'm the type of person that if I'm going to sing, it should be in the car or in the shower where I'm by myself. And when the teacher told me that, and it was the way that I heard it, okay? He said I wasn't obviously going to be Snow White, that I would be better suited to help with the props, help with the props, do some of the painting and be in the background, Kim. Just go back there and support everyone else, AKA people pleasing. But let me get back to the story. What was so hard about this and so pivotal was the way that I interpreted this experience. When I heard that I wasn't good enough for Snow White, I wasn't good enough to sing, I didn't sing well, I felt unworthy, that I didn't matter, I wasn't valuable, and I wasn't good enough. And the reason why is that as a 10-year-old, I just felt such disappointment. I felt shame. And because I didn't learn and I wasn't taught, none of us were, by the way, most of us were not taught how to process our emotions. And so rather than it becoming such a defining, pivotal experience that played out for much of my life, it could have been a different scenario. Okay, pause. Everything happens for a reason, is meant to happen for a reason. I needed that to happen. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's play this out. Because this is, if you're a parent or you're wanting or planning to be a parent at some point, this is a really good tip slash tool to keep in mind when you are raising your kids, because this is where things went awry for me. If I had shared with my mom, and I don't even really remember if I did or didn't, my mom or my dad, someone that was an adult figure in my life, that I was really disappointed. If I shared with them how I felt, that I felt shame and I felt bad about myself and that I was wrong for even thinking I could try out for Snow White. And then that person, let's just say my mom, said to me, Kim, sweetie, I hear you and understand that you are disappointed that you didn't get the lead of Snow White. That must feel very disappointing. And then she could go on and say something like, but I want you to know that just because you didn't get the lead of Snow White doesn't mean that you're a bad girl, that you're not worthy, you're lovable, something along those lines, just to reassure me that getting a lead in a play or not getting the lead has nothing to do with my worth and my value as a human being. That could have been a completely different outcome. Like, then I could have internalized and interpreted that experience differently so that it didn't have such an impact and mark on me. Because from that experience forward, there were several others. And every time a situation that was similar, where I went for a lead or I went for it, I stepped outside my comfort zone. I reached for the stars. I tried to be my full self. I tried out for being a forward when I played soccer. Didn't get that role either. I tried out for a role in Greece. I kept on trying to go for the stars, reach for the stars, because I still, at this point, still had this sense of I could do anything. That one incident of the Snow White didn't knock me down completely, but the subsequent events that continued that were similar did eventually take away from my self-worth and my self-esteem. I did eventually dim my light more and more. Why do I share this story? I share this story with you because we're talking about fear of failing, playing small, staying in your comfort zone. And I want to share this with you. And I want you to know that if you are experiencing this fear of failing, to take a moment and just explore, reflect, examine your life, your childhood, and see what story do you have. And maybe you're already aware of the story. Maybe you already know exactly where it comes from for you. And if you do, then that's great. You already are a step ahead. If you aren't aware of where this nagging, haunting feeling of just you're not good enough and you need to just play small. And how does that look? I've already shared a little bit, but let me say some more on how that can look if you're playing small and staying in your comfort zone. You might be the type of person who has a job that you go to every single day, 9 to 5. And there's no problem with having a 9 to 5 job if you enjoy getting up in the morning and going to your job. But let's say that you go to this job and you're miserable. There's just this nagging, haunting feeling that there is something more for you, that you're capable for more, to do more. And maybe it's even your soul is calling you that there's something different that you're meant to do in your life. And you hear it, it's like a whisper telling you, there's something else. There's something else. This job isn't it. Or maybe you are the type of person who is staying home and you're raising your kids and you're not feeling fulfilled from that either because your soul is calling you for something else. Now, it may not necessarily be that you have to uproot your life and quit your job or leave your kids. I'm not saying that. It could be maybe there's something that would be alongside that. Maybe there's a hobby that you could do, or maybe you've always wanted to garden or skydive or something, and you just keep putting it off because you're like, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I don't have anyone to do it with. So you put it off, put it off. And yet that voice keeps coming back around, like pulling you, drawing you to do this, but you ignore it because you just are used to staying in your comfort zone and you are afraid to take the risk and to fail. That's what I'm talking about. And that's why I shared the Snow White story, because that experience stayed with me for a good part of my life until I realized, okay, I heard the voice, but I kept ignoring it. I was afraid that if I couldn't do it perfectly, that I would feel unvalued, that I would feel unworthy or not good enough. So if it wasn't going to be perfect, then don't do it at all. Typical characteristic and trait for the perfectionist. It's either all or nothing. If I can't do it all perfectly, then don't even bother. And I'm definitely not going to take the risk and put myself out there and perhaps look like a failure. So going back to, if you already know the story and where it comes from, that's great and amazing. The next step is to, you could either journal, you can work with someone, you can reach out to me, even if you are struggling and you need support in getting unstuck and how to move forward. I've done this. I've been there, done that. I know how to heal and move out of this and away from this. So you can always leave me a comment or reach out to me through email and let me know you need support. If you don't even know where it comes from, then that's when I encourage you to just take some time. You can journal, reflect, and think about your childhood. What experiences happened to you that may have led you to feeling like you're too afraid to fail? And so you play small. And if you don't have fear of failure and you go for the stars and you take risks all the time, I pretty much am sure you're not listening to this episode. And so this may not be for you. In any event, here's what I want to say is that life is short. Dr. Phil used to say all the time when I used to watch him when the kids were little and I was staying home raising them, he would always say that this is not a dress rehearsal. This is your life. And as a person who spent many years letting those opportunities go by, and I ignored that voice in me because I was too afraid. And I don't want to say I regret because I got there, but I didn't maybe need to take as long. And so by sharing this episode, my hope is for you that you can hear the call. Maybe you'll hear the call and you hear me pointing the direction, go, this is the way, this is the way. And it sparks something in you that says, okay, I hear what Kim is saying. And I want to start to do something differently. I want to start taking the first step toward stepping outside my comfort zone and listening to my soul's call to do what I truly want to do or I'm meant to do. And I'm no longer willing to allow my fear of failing to get in the way. And that I'm pointing the finger in this direction, you're like, okay, I'm going. And here's the other thing that I'm going to end with is this, that if you have perfectionistic tendencies, I want to say a couple of things as you venture on this journey. One, baby steps, taking small steps. If you are at the beginning of this, small baby steps. Two is to allow for grace and compassion when that fear comes up. And it comes up really big and really strong because it will. Because the moment you make a decision that you're going to go do something that is outside of your comfort zone, it's something new, it's unfamiliar, that old pattern is going to creep up and say to you, no way, that fear is going to come up big and it's going to come up strong. And if you don't follow through and you go back to your old way, that's where I want you to have a lot of grace and a lot of compassion and remind yourself. So my episode, if you didn't hear it last week, was on progress, not perfection. So see, we're talking a lot about perfectionism here. Big time. These two episodes, this week's and last week, big time on perfectionism. If you struggle with it and you didn't hear last week's episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to that one as well. If you have questions about anything that I shared in this episode, let me know in the comments section. You can email me as well, and I'm happy to try to explain further or support you even further. And as always, if you are still wondering whether or not you have people pleasing or perfectionistic tendencies, I have a quiz right on my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. It's a short quiz, 10 questions about people pleasing and 10 questions about perfectionism. And at the very least, it's just informative. So I invite you to go and take that quiz. It's right there on the homepage of my website. And then I look forward to seeing you next week on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. And I just want to say one last thing is that I am really grateful that you are here, that you're listening to these episodes, you're supporting this podcast. And if you do enjoy it, I encourage you to subscribe or to leave a review because When you do that, that just helps the algorithms to push this content out more and further so that this can help even more people. So I would love and appreciate if you can help me to get this message out to more and more people. Because what I can tell you, I am learning more and more every single day is how many people out there really struggle with people pleasing and perfectionism. It's blowing my mind. It's mind blowing how every time I turn around and tell someone that I work with people pleasers, that I coach people pleasers and perfectionists, and they say, oh, that's me. That's me. It's mind blowing. All right, everybody, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.